Broke single dad buys diapers with last dollar. The lonely CEO behind him says, "I'll take them all." The checkout light flickered like it was tired too, buzzing above a line of people who all looked like they had somewhere else to be. In that small grocery store on the edge of a quiet American town, a man stood gripping a thin pack of diapers as if it were the most fragile thing in the world. His hands shook, not from cold, but from the weight of knowing that once he paid for them, there would be nothing left. No backup. No miracle waiting at home. Just another night of hoping his baby wouldn't cry from hunger or discomfort. In that moment, the world felt painfully silent, as if it was holding its breath to see whether he would break. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us humanity still exists, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep these real, heart-touching stories alive. Michael Turner had never imagined his life would narrow down to this moment. He was 32, with tired eyes that looked older than his years and shoulders that carried more than their fair share of loss. 2 years earlier, he had been a construction supervisor with steady work, weekend barbecues, and a small but happy home. Then came the accident on the interstate that took his wife, Emily, and left him alone with their newborn son, Noah. Grief had hollowed him out, but responsibility had forced him to keep moving. He learned to function on little sleep, to warm bottles at midnight, and to smile at his son even when his chest ached so badly it felt like it might cave in. The bills had piled up quietly at first. Medical expenses from the accident. Childcare costs he could barely afford. When the construction company downsized, Michael was one of the first to be let go. He took whatever work he could find, delivering food, fixing fences, cleaning garages. Pride had long since become a luxury he couldn't afford. Every dollar was measured, every purchase calculated. Still, some things could not be negotiated, and diapers were one of them. That evening, he had counted the cash 3 times before walking into the store. One crumpled bill and a handful of coins. Enough for the cheapest pack of diapers, if the price hadn't gone up again. As he waited in line, he glanced down at the worn sneakers on his feet and the faint stain on his jacket from a night Noah had been sick. He thought of the empty fridge at home, the half loaf of bread, the jar of peanut butter. He told himself food could wait. His son could not. Behind him stood another man, tall, well-dressed, his coat tailored and shoes polished to a soft shine. He looked out of place in that modest store, like someone who had taken a wrong turn. His name was David Caldwell, though no one there knew it. To the outside world, he was a powerful CEO of a national logistics company, a man whose signature moved millions of dollars. But that evening, David felt smaller than he ever had. Success had filled his calendar but emptied his life. His penthouse apartment echoed with silence, and his phone buzzed more with business alerts than human connection. David had come into the store on a whim, avoiding the drive back to an empty home. He noticed Michael immediately, not because of what he wore, but because of how he stood. There was a heaviness in him that David recognized all too well. Loneliness had a posture, and Michael carried it like a shadow. As the line crept forward, David watched Michael's fingers tighten around the diaper pack, saw him glance up at the price display with a quiet kind of fear. When it was Michael's turn, the cashier scanned the diapers, and the total appeared on the screen. Michael swallowed hard. He counted his money again, slower this time, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They didn't. He was short by a few dollars. Heat rushed to his face, and he felt the familiar sting of shame. He apologized softly, his voice barely audible, and asked the cashier to remove the item. The thought of going home without diapers made his stomach twist, but humiliation burned even hotter. In that suspended moment, when defeat settled in like a heavy fog, something shifted. David felt it before he understood it. He remembered his own childhood, growing up with a single mother who worked double shifts and pretended not to be tired. He remembered standing in lines like this, watching her choose between groceries and dignity. Success had distanced him from those memories, but they had never truly left. Seeing Michael there cracked something open inside him. David stepped forward, his presence calm but deliberate. He didn't make a show of it. He simply acted, driven by an impulse that felt less like charity and more like necessity. He told the cashier to ring up the diapers again, along with everything else Michael had placed on the counter earlier and then put back. Formula. Baby wipes. Even a small stuffed animal David spotted near the register. Michael tried to protest, his face a mix of disbelief and pride, but David gently insisted, not with words, but with the quiet authority of someone who had finally remembered what mattered. The transaction was completed, and the receipt stretched long across the counter. The cashier smiled through misty eyes. Michael stood frozen, unsure how to process what had just happened. Gratitude flooded him, overwhelming and humbling. He felt seen in a way he hadn't since Emily died. David met his eyes briefly, offering a nod that carried more understanding than any speech could. They walked out of the store together into the cool evening air. The parking lot lights cast long shadows, and for a moment, the world felt softer. Michael loaded the bags into his old car, his hands still trembling, but now with relief. David watched, feeling something unfamiliar settle in his chest. It wasn't triumph or pride. It was connection. Over the next few days, Michael couldn't stop thinking about that moment. It replayed in his mind as he changed Noah's diaper, as he rocked him to sleep, as he whispered promises he hoped he could keep. The kindness of a stranger had done more than fill a need. It had restored a piece of his faith in people, and in himself. He decided then that he wouldn't let despair be the story his son grew up with. Meanwhile, David found himself unsettled in a good way. The encounter lingered, following him into boardrooms and late-night work sessions. For the first time in years, he questioned the emptiness he had accepted as the price of success. He began volunteering anonymously at a local shelter, funding programs he had once ignored, seeking out moments that felt real. Weeks later, their paths crossed again, not by accident but by quiet intention. David had asked around discreetly, learning about Michael's situation. He offered him steady work at one of his company's local facilities, not as a favor, but as an opportunity. Michael accepted, determined to prove himself. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and stability felt like a miracle. Months passed, and life slowly began to change. Michael paid off overdue bills, stocked his fridge without counting every penny, and started to smile more easily. Noah grew, his laughter filling the small apartment with joy. David, too, found his life reshaped. He formed friendships, reconnected with family, and learned that giving didn't diminish him, it expanded him. As you reach this part of the story, take a moment to comment below and share what this story means to you, or if you've ever witnessed a moment of kindness that changed a life. One evening, nearly a year after that night at the grocery store, Michael stood at the back of a community center watching David help organize a charity drive. Their lives had become quietly intertwined, not bound by obligation, but by mutual respect and gratitude. Michael realized that the worst moment of his life had also been the doorway to something better. He had learned that accepting help didn't make him weak, and that kindness often arrives when hope feels impossible. David, standing under the warm lights of the hall, understood something too. That a single, simple act had redirected his life more than any corporate achievement ever had. He had taken them all that night, the diapers, the cost, the responsibility, and in doing so, he had gained something priceless. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the smallest act can change everything, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps spread stories that matter. The world is full of quiet heroes standing in grocery store lines, carrying invisible burdens. Sometimes, all it takes is one person to step forward and remind them they are not alone. The quiet miracle that followed. Life did not transform overnight into something perfect, but it softened in ways Michael had not believed possible. The job David offered him came with early mornings and tired muscles, yet every ache felt honest, earned, and meaningful. Michael would wake before dawn, carefully lift Noah from his crib, and whisper prayers his mother had once taught him, asking God not for wealth or ease, but simply for strength to be a good father for one more day. Those prayers, once desperate, slowly became steadier, more confident, as days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The first paycheck Michael received felt heavier than money. He stood at the kitchen counter staring at it, overwhelmed by the realization that it represented dignity. He paid the electric bill that had been overdue for months, then bought groceries without fear, even allowing himself to choose Noah's favorite baby food without checking the price twice. That night, he cooked a simple meal, sat on the floor with his son, and laughed freely for the first time since Emily's death. In that laughter, there was grief, yes, but also healing. At work, Michael proved himself not with words but with effort. He stayed late, volunteered for the difficult tasks, and treated every responsibility as if it mattered deeply, because to him, it did. David noticed quietly. He never hovered, never reminded Michael of the grocery store night, but he watched with respect as Michael earned the trust of supervisors and coworkers alike. For David, this was a lesson in humility. He had always believed leadership meant control and distance. Now he learned it could also mean patience and belief in others. David's own life continued to change in subtle but profound ways. The loneliness that once followed him like a shadow began to loosen its grip. Volunteering brought him face to face with people whose lives were shaped by circumstances far harsher than his own, and instead of feeling superior or obligated, he felt connected. He began attending a small church near his office, sitting in the back pew at first, listening more than participating. The sermons about grace and service struck him differently now. They no longer sounded theoretical. They sounded lived. One Sunday afternoon, after a community outreach event, David found Michael sitting on the steps outside the church, Noah asleep against his chest. The autumn air was crisp, leaves scattering across the pavement. They sat together without speaking for a long moment, watching families come and go. There was no awkwardness, only an unspoken understanding that their lives had intersected for a reason neither fully understood but both deeply respected. Michael thought about how close he had come to losing hope that night at the store. How easily bitterness could have taken root. Instead, kindness had intervened, not loudly, not dramatically, but decisively. He realized then that what had saved him was not just financial help, but the reminder that he still mattered, that he was seen as a man and a father, not a burden. As Noah grew into a toddler, his first steps happened on a living room floor still marked by old wear and tear, but filled with warmth. Michael cried quietly, overwhelmed by the beauty of witnessing a future unfold. He kept Emily's photo on the wall, telling Noah stories about his mother, making sure love remained the foundation of their home. He no longer felt like he was merely surviving. He was building something. David, watching from the edges of these moments, felt a peace he had chased unsuccessfully for years. His success had once been measured in profits and expansion. Now it was measured in impact, in faces that smiled because someone had cared enough to act. The grocery store night replayed in his mind often, not as a moment of generosity, but as the night he stopped walking past pain and chose to step into it. A year later, the community center hosted another charity drive, larger than the last. Michael stood at the front this time, helping organize donations, greeting families with the same quiet compassion he had once received. David watched from the back, heart full, knowing the cycle of kindness had continued beyond him. That, more than any recognition, felt like success. Just before the event ended, Michael paused, looking around the room filled with laughter, hope, and second chances. He understood then that miracles don't always come as dramatic rescues. Sometimes they come as a stranger in line, a small decision, a willingness to say, "I'll take them all," when the world tells you to look away. If this continuation moved you, if it reminded you that healing takes time but kindness accelerates it, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And before you leave, comment below with one word that describes how this story made you feel. Because somewhere, right now, another tired parent is standing in line with their last dollar, hoping someone sees them. And sometimes, the greatest change begins with one quiet act of compassion.